He said your friends did.
Hello and welcome to another television review from MBE. Just like to thank you for joining us once again here on our YouTube channel and of course our Twitch stream. Now John.
Yes.
Join with John here as always, and we're going to be reviewing the finale of Scam 1992, the Harshad Mehta story. We have just done episode 9, John. We're into episode 10. It's a very strange title. It's Main History, Banana Chahta Hoon. And I'm just going to read the short synopsis, getting a high rating of 9.5.
The highest of the season?
Yeah, debatable in my book, but we'll just read this little short synopsis of what's happening.
There's issues to be had with this episode, Stephen, and we will surely divulge on said issues as this review.
Well, we have to, don't we? That's our jobs.
Yes.
I wish it was my job. That's for another day. Daly strikes a deal with Harshad, based on which he withdraws his press statement. Crore gets back to life with most of Harshad's assets being frozen. However, Bushan's revelations is soon going to turn Harshad's world upside down. Now I'm going to hand it over to you now, John.
Bushan's lies.
For the final time in this finale of Scam 1992, the Harshad Mehta story.
Yes, Stephen, a topsy-turvy episode, this one. It has some high moments, it has some nice moments, it has some emotive moments, it has some low moments, and the low moments tend to coincide with structural issues and timelines, so we'll get into that. I'm absolutely certain of that. But the introduction, Stephen, brief backstory on what transpired after that press conference. We get a little sort of whirlwind sequence. We think he's going to go and grab the bull by the horns, like he said to Ajay Kedar and Tiaji on the golf course.
Yeah.
But instead he backtracks. He has meetings with said sort of advisor from Delhi again.
Yeah. Tries
to get exoneration, completely exonerated of all crimes. They say, look, there's a limit to what we can do. But he backs off, completely going after the Prime Minister. There's contradictions in his sort of testimonies and stuff like that. The market is free falling. It falls 2,000 points, I think, from 4,000 odd to something around the 2,000 mark. He has had his assets freezed, as you did say. He can't trade on the stock exchange in Bombay. And then there's all sorts of shit going on around about him. People who he got to invest in grow more, who he let down, who were in financial turmoil, who were having people trapping on their doors, are then considering taking their lives. One guy sadly does take his life. We see him flip-flop in and out of the story, him and his wife. He's having one-to-ones. He's looking, he's feeling a bit down. Jumps off also a rooftop. It's a hard watch, actually, Stephen. You hear the thud, and then it goes right into the intro, and it's kind of sick because I think one of the parts of the intro is a guy falling.
The animated chap, I think that's Harshad, actually. It's building, it's collapsing, isn't it? But yeah, John, you're right, it's a hard watch, but it shows the consequences of Harshad's actions. And obviously people's faith in his advice and what he's telling them. The thing that surprised me was Harshad and his brother attending the funeral or whatever it's called. I thought, why
crass.
are you there? I mean, the widow asks why he's there, and she's got every right to ask.
Steve, will you admit that we initially had the wrong subtitles, and we had to acquire other subtitles?
I was about 5 minutes in, and I was like, this isn't syncing right with me. You know that way you can sense it, and I think as well because a lot of the dialogue is spoken in English, broken English as well at times, and I'm thinking, there's something up here, there's something not right here, and there was the widow's she had this long rant that she was firing across to Harshad, and it was a great speech once we did get the subtitles right, John, but it was a strange one, but I think it's to show as well that as much as you might be on Harshad's side, you've got to remember the consequences of his actions. Did he care for these people? Were they just pawns in his game? All these things are, brought to the surface, and I think with that chap's tragic suicide, that kind of answers those questions that might be in your head. Actually, at that point, I was like, do you know something? You really should be punished for your actions because this, and she says this as well, there's more like him out there that are doing this as well because they put their faith in you and you've let them down.
Yes, and Stephen also highlights that there is a human tragedy element to this scam. That for everything that he has committed, there is a consequence.
I do think sometimes he just doesn't think. He's so focused on the end game, the goal in his life. He doesn't really consider the consequences around him.
Yeah, because of course he had a conversation with someone in a previous episode who was going on at him about investments and not getting the money back, and essentially told him, look, that's the risk within investments within the stock exchange. It won't always pay off. I can't be accountable. I'm busy. I've got things to do. Bye-bye. Put the phone call down. So, whilst I do like Harshad, and I think he is a tragic figure, and we'll get into that later on in this episode, he's a maverick. The guy isn't a fraudster. He was just an opportunist who utilised loopholes in the system for his own gain and for other people's gain, because he says that the sort of reason d'etre was always to never let down the investor, never have an investor incur losses for what Harshad Mehta has done, for his sort of risks. So I enjoyed that, man.
The higher up people knew what he was doing, but didn't stop him doing it because they were benefiting from it as well. And they always knew if the shit hit the fan, they had their man to pin it on.
Absolutely.
That's the worst part about it. That it's not really till this episode, maybe last episode, that you realise that Harshad is a tragic figure. And I know we'll get into it further down the line, John, but I thought probably the first 5 or 6 episodes he was the man in control. He was directing everything, when in fact he wasn't. You know, it was people above him. You know,
and it was also investments underneath him as well, and just the system, almost like the current taking him on this journey. He was opportunistic enough and smart enough that he could manipulate things here and there to propel him on this cataclysmic rise. He played the long game, meteoric rise. It was cataclysmic for him in the end, but it was, Stephen, there was other things going on, other machinations within this system, Delhi and other things happening, really controlling the sort of narrative. It wasn't really. It's almost a. It's a bit strange it being called it is the Harshad Mehta story, because it's sort of regaling and taking you through what this guy's journey was. But it's almost kind of sick and twisted in a way as well, because whilst it is the Harshad Mehta story, it's actually a story of corruption and of meddling and of broken financial systems. So it isn't really the Mehta story. It wasn't. His actual lawyer was right in the previous episode. It shouldn't be the Harshad Mehta story. It should be whatever that Prime Minister's name was. I can't remember his name. It's his story. It's a story of corruption, and I like that. That's why I love this actual season. This story, it was really well handled. The way it flowed, the way it was written in terms of the script, the way it sort of ebbed and flowed all over the place in a sense, bringing in different figures from different parts of the financial sectors, from different mucky parts of the government, from sort of investigative agencies, the CBI and stuff like that. The way it just moved all over the place and told the story, it was really natural and organic. And as I keep saying, I'm going to miss watching it. It's a shame we've came to the end of this. I really wish there was a second season, but sadly it wasn't to be. You're right, Stephen, though, going back to it, Harshad, he has that awkward confrontation, if I can speak the Queen's English, and I can't, and I'm not a fan of the Queen, so I hate saying that phrase. You probably know that if you've watched me before, though. I'm not a fan of the monarchy and of Britain and the empire that spawned out of it in general. Just getting that off my chest. But Stephen, obviously the dead guy's wife, she has a real good rant, and it's a great scene. She's showing off her acting skills, basically saying to him, do you know why he died? And he says, no, of course I don't. She says, but you know everything. You told him to invest, you told him this would happen, that would happen, it didn't happen. He trusted you, and you've let him down. He's dead now because of you. They'll say it's suicide, but you murdered him.
She asked her husband how it would work, and I think what she
trusting
said was,
Harshad.
Trusting her. It was very sad.
Yeah, it was. It was a sad, and Stephen, I liked the way that paid off as well. That was a nice little subplot that was popping in and out, as I keep saying. It was sort of flip-flopping in and out of the story, and they paid it off nicely. You show the human the sort of element of this guy's scams, his rise and fall and stuff like that. It wasn't all about Meta. It wasn't all about Citibank getting one-upmanship and investments and all of this dodgy dealings. There was a human element too. The investors underneath were sort of falling on their own swords, and it was a tragedy. But obviously, round about this point, I'm trying to read where we are here. Sacheta does an interview with Sacheta. We spoke about this before we came on. Kind of strange the way this sort of comes in and out of this episode as well in terms of timeline, because this takes place, this episode, over a good 10-year stretch. Jumps from 93 to 2001 until obviously Harshad passes away, sadly. This interview comes in and out in various different parts of the episode when it shouldn't really be, because it's all fixed in a single time, but it's taking place over the course of 10 years. And what I've said, Stephen, and this is my take on it, I don't know if you agree with me, this is almost like Harshad's side of the story. She sort of says that to him, I want your side. He says, look, truths and stuff like that, it's all false, it's all bullshit in a sense. What you're wanting is sensationalism, you're wanting yada yada yada. You know, you've watched the episode. If you're watching this, you've watched the episode, Stephen, you know what he said. But it's almost like his eulogy. He's eulogising over what's happened. He's sort of looking back in sadness about what could have happened, what didn't happen. Also, when he passes away, he narrates from this interview. So this is sort of like the heart and soul of Harshad in this episode.
Think that's where the director is going with this one. I think for anyone that doesn't know, obviously, the Harshad's sort of life, and death, it's really to keep that suspense going. I think that's why you have that narration right up to the end. A lot of films do that as well. Kevin Spacey's character in American Beauty was narrating right after his death as well, and that's just to really keep the element of surprise. But if you already know the end game of his story,
Stephen, I was surprised they showed that.
I did as well, John, because I felt that there's such a time gap between 1992 and his death, and I felt I can't understand why they would stretch it out this far unless they're going to do a second season. They didn't. They put 10 years into one episode, which I didn't like. I don't know about you, John.
No, I hated it.
I didn't like that structure. I didn't like the way it was sort of flitting back and forth between the interview between him and Sucheta, and then going to 2001, 2003, jumping up to 2007 or whatever it was, and going back to the interview. And it kind of threw me off. I'm like, well, when did this interview take place? I'm not really following. It was the only criticism I had of probably the whole season was the structure of this episode. Yeah,
it was strange, Stephen. It did. I didn't like the fact that so many years sort of transpired within this single episode. We've seen that in obviously the first two episodes. It jumped 10, 15 years or something like that. It's 1970s to 1990s. That was fine because you were setting it up. I thought we could have got more meat and bones out of the sort of investigating into this guy's life, the sort of fallout of this scam, and how the broken system was brought to light, brought to the attention of India and the world as a whole. I thought there was more meat in the bones. You could have got more and more episodes out of that. Sadly, they didn't get down that route though. They wanted to sort of wrap it up, and it felt rushed, and I didn't like that aspect of that episode. That I wouldn't say it besmirched or sullied the actual season for me. It didn't. It was a well written, very well structured, and and sort of flowing season as a whole. But that was just a little gripe of mine, I have to say. But look, Stephen, getting back, I don't want to keep diving off and getting off in tangents because it's dangerous when you do that. Certainly when you've had a drink and you're as tired as I am. So let's get back into the actual point here. Obviously, I've said Mehta has an ideological inability to admit any guilt. In that interview, he ends the interview abruptly, or Sucheta ends it because she doesn't like what she's getting from him. He's so anchored to the financial side of things and the good that he done that he can't really see that it's a huge scam and the part he played in the scam. He thinks it's just the system. I didn't do anything wrong. I was opportunistic. I played the loopholes. He's that anchored to that. He just cannot see outside of it. It's ideologically entrenched, and because of that, obviously that's almost his undoing in a sense, because if he'd admitted from the very start and unearthed everything that was going on, it may not have got as bad as it did for him. But he was he had this fantasy element where he thought he could come out and prevail and that he could bring down Delhi. He could maybe, I don't know, negotiate with Delhi and maybe hope that he could bring them down if they weren't playing ball. It was a sort of war he was never going to win in a sense. He was always going to lose. You're not going to win with governments and when they have everything under their control and stuff like that. This guy's just one man.
Is obviously on his heels as well. But the interview, I kind of saw that coming as well, John. Harshad and Sucheta are polar opposites, and I like both the characters. I do really like both the characters for different reasons. Sucheta is truth-seeking as well, but there was times when it got personal with her, and I know that that rubbed you up the wrong way, John. But
especially when she flat out lied about it.
Yeah, but then
it was never personal.
She gets married. This was something that just. I don't know the chap's name. I've looked for his name. He's not got a photograph on IMDb, and I don't recall too many instances where they refer to his name.
Steve, you know what I'll do? I will search her up. Sucheta Dalal, as you speak, and I'll find out who her husband was, and I'll pin it.
But it was a kind of montage, wasn't it? It was a kind of this sort of sequence. It was nice music as well. I liked the music they were playing during the wedding. And it was a very colourful event as well. But at the same time, it's in a slice with what's happening with Harshad. He's losing all his assets at an auction.
Yep.
He actually attended the auction to see his cars. I think it was a Lexus.
It was a Lexus, Alexi, yeah.
Alexi, as Partridge would say. Dan.
Dan!
I think... I don't know
Java.
why. I don't know why he put himself through that. The guy that got his car took a photo of himself, didn't he?
Yeah, and he was in the background.
It
Yeah,
was very similar to when Harshad got the car. I think he had a photo getting taken the car as well, and you can see him in the background. Just he's obviously deflated.
Yeah, he's not a happy chap.
So Sucheta's life sort of,
it's poetic.
Yeah, on the rise. His is going down the way. They're meeting each other. As one goes up, one goes down.
Halfway. Yeah.
And it was a great sequence, John. It was kind of out of the blue. The relationship between, I don't know the guy's name yet, but him and Sucheta.
Well, it's Debashu. Our spouse is Debashish Basu, but I cannot find that character's name in the IMDb of Scam 1992 Harshad Meta story. So it is. It's very strange.
John, apart from possibly the last episode where she put her head on his shoulder on the plane home. Yeah. And
it wasn't really explored, Stephen. It was more Harshad's story. In their defence,
perhaps it wasn't something we really had to concentrate on.
It took me off guard, let's put it that way, when he proposed to her. I thought, this is a little bit abrupt.
I thought it was a platonic relationship, John, up to a point. Because there was no hint of it until
it was sort of friendly.
Yeah.
Sort of jousting and stuff like that over the case and investigating. I never really seen the romance, but hey ho, it happened in real life. They had to force it in briefly, in amongst the shit going on with Harshad, and that's absolutely fine.
We also get to discover during the interview, John, as well, Harshad asking Sucheta, I hear you're writing a book, and this is obviously what this television series is based on.
Based on the book, yeah.
This Scam, yeah.
That's brilliant, isn't it? It's getting very sort of Inception-ish, meta, I think is the word. It's getting all meta. We're getting in within stories, and it's
Meta.
Yeah, Meta. Yeah, it works. Wow, that's I didn't even realise that there. I says that and it didn't even come to my brain, Stephen. There you go. You're always a step ahead. Obviously, Harshad Bhai, do you have a telescope attached to your head? That's a quote, incidentally, I'm reading. How do you see so far into the future? Not the furniture, because it's auto-corrected me.
X-ray vision. See right at a coffee table.
It auto-corrects me. I hate Apple. Oh, you shithead. I hate Siri, and I hate the autocorrect. It's my absolute bane on my existence. But look, obviously Ashwin is criticising Harshad at this moment. He's watching him in an interview. He's thinking this guy's just remaining busy while doing nothing. That's him all over. But he's really a step ahead. This guy sees the sort of onset of the internet, of personal computers in the mid-1990s, and he sees a sort of an avenue to advise on the stocks.
John, even that quote, it's so late 90s, isn't it? I've set up a website on the internet. Nobody really says that now, do they?
And what was the name of the website? You recognised it?
It was Lycos.
Lycos, there you go.
Blast from the past.
So he's obviously he's seen another avenue, Stephen. Ask Jeeves, I remember that, yeah. Before Google. Yeah. The dark days. Yeah. Before the what was
AOL. Remember AOL as well?
The dark days before the Empire.
Yeah.
Is that what he says?
I can't remember.
The dark days of the Galactic Empire. I digress, man. We're going off in tangents here. It's getting it's over. It's past 12 o'clock at night here.
John, I know why. Because you're looking forward to seeing the final episode of The Mandalorian.
The Mandalorian. Cannot wait to watch it, man. It's been a good day. I've watched the final episode of Scam 1992. I'm watching the final episode of Season 2 of The Mandalorian. It's just can't get any better than that in terms of content getting consumed. It's good, high caliber content. But look,
Paul McCartney's stuff is now on Spotify.
Well,
McCartney 3. So
well, actually, listen to one of these songs. I tell you what, in terms of instrumental, Jesus Christ, the guy still got it, man. He's playing about 7 different instruments in a one song. Drums, guitar, all sorts of nice little piano. Not at the same time though, but my God, the guy's still got it. He's a talented guy, even if his voice is a little bit dodgy now. But look, that's fine. He's late 70s. It's to be expected. I can get that guy's voice just now that he's got in his 70s. I haven't got that in my 30s, let alone what he had in his 20s. So I can't criticise. But what I digress. I'm going off in tangents here, Steve.
That's my fault.
Yes, that's okay. Tangents are good. They take you to a nice little happy place, as perhaps Bob Ross would say. Bob Ross. What's going on here? Oh, obviously, Stephen.
John, talking about hair, right? Bob Ross, right? Talking about hair. Harshad's hair in this episode is concerning.
Not as concerning as my hair, Stephen.
No, I saw a screenshot, John, of episode 1. And what a full head of hair this guy had. Shiny, glossy hair, beautiful hair. getting to episode 10.
He was a young guy there. That was the 70s.
It looks almost like
30 years have passed,
it looks
even
like
nearly.
Weetabix painted black. It's stuck on his head. It's a very funny texture. But you start to see the tempos going grey as well.
It's
I
a
can't
stress.
talk. I've got that as well.
It's a stress.
But it's not stress with me.
No, you've just had a newborn baby.
Exactly. Stressful enough.
Doesn't get any more stressful than that.
It shows the sort of aging of him, John. It shows you the sort of pressure that's on him as well in his life. I know we'll get to obviously talk about the sort of closing scenes of this episode as well, but you can see the deterioration as well and how old he's getting. He was only in his late 30s as well at this point.
Yeah, he died 41, didn't he? So he was a young chap when he died, let's be honest. But Stephen, he goes through a physical transformation in this. He gets very gaunt, skinny, emaciated. He's obviously spending time in the cells, in the jail in a sense.
Yeah.
He's losing his hair. Things aren't going well for him. He's losing his assets, his money. He's still got that nice little Bombay penthouse. Oh, and that's perhaps something, to cling on to as he loses absolutely everything that he's built in his entire life. But also, Stephen, he tries to find an avenue, man. He advises through the internet, and he starts trying to set up Grow More again. He has pushback against it. They like his ideas of advising through the website. You don't have to actually go to physical places to speak to people with cups of tea. You can actually do it remotely. He's thinking ahead. He's 10, 15 years ahead of the curve, as ever. Harshad's been ahead of the curve in this entire season, getting into companies and sizing up how morale is in the workforce and using that to gauge stock prices and stuff like that. Guy's been ahead of the curve the entire season. But obviously he tries to set up Grow More. He gets pushed back. He decides to create another company in his in-laws' names to try and circumvent it. And he's in a sense rigging stock prices. He's creating an artificial market, as Sucheta puts it, which ultimately crashes. And he gets caught again. He gets caught because the prices rise up and then they immediately fall right back down, and he realises they went a little bit too high here. We're catching people's eyes.
I don't think we can mention that last bit of this point you're making here about her. I just laughed at that. That's the first time I've seen that.
I really started to dislike her when she was going after him again, because I became so emotionally attached and bonded to Harshad. He's a maverick.
How quick were they on him though? Setting up this new company under the in-laws as the directors of the company.
Well, Stephen, she says that her and obviously her soon-to-be her husband at that point, they say that there's been sort of safeguards put in place. This company that investigates now have got more ability to go in hands-on and deal with the situation, and you see that. They go to his offices, they purge all of his records, and they immediately close it down. They close that shit down, and that just shows you where it's went in this story. They went from being toothless, going through every single little minutiae of bank receipts and stuff like that. It took years upon years to find the actual true scale of the scam before actually getting to investigating and bringing it down. A week and it's shut down. So that shows you what Sucheta, in a sense, had achieved. Her whole goal was to unearth the scam and stop it happening again. Because he says to her at one point in that interview, no one cares. She says, I care. That's what her legacy is. Also unearthing the scam, changing the system forever, where it can't happen again. So that's some legacy to have.
Yeah, and I think that sort of little sequence was to highlight that fact, that it wasn't as an in-depth investigation to be onto him right away this time. Not just him, but anyone that's sort of tried to rig the game, and I think it was over before it began. Yeah,
and that's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
You're doing wrong, you deserve to be brought to task for it in a sense. But look, Stephen, speaking about doing wrong, Busan the Rat. Surprise, surprise, da 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 da. I called this out 3 episodes ago, this little shithead.
Yep. You've got another name for him.
Cook in the books, little bald F I've called him. He withheld 300 crores from the shares when they were doing sort of looking over, and he had to take stock and give it to the CBI, the authorities. He withheld it, moved it into another company, sold it off into the stock exchange to earn himself some money. 300 crores worth, that's a lot of money. Of course, he kept it secret. It gets unearthed. Ashwin discovers the inaccuracies and stuff like that in the books. They go and rat out to the CBI. Well, they go to the CBI to try and reclaim these shares, thinking it's been a miscalculation from the initial investigation. And then it all comes to a head. Busan unveils himself to be a rat. He goes in to Ashwan and Harshad. Look, and I'm calling him a rat, but you can see from his point of view, he was left to the side. The guy was promised the world. He get nothing. He was I was about to say an internet gopher. That's a totally different thing. We've got gophers on the internet. We've got everything on the internet now, man. We'll get people paying big fat heifers to put more weight on. It's a mucky world on the internet, man, I tell you. But obviously...
I don't know what an internet gopher is. I don't want to know.
Stephen does that. Listen, I don't know what it is either, but I'm sure it exists because it's the internet. It's 2020.
Don't Google it, folks.
No, we're not Googling that shit, man. It'll be like... I'll be like Pulp Fiction at the end. That's the kind of gophers you've got on the internet. But obviously, he's an office gopher, Stephen.
Yeah.
He's what did you say? An office clerk?
An office clerk, yeah.
He's an office clerk, and he feels wronged, and he says, and he's right. You gained out of this. This was your. You says you would. What was it he says again? Join me, and I'll guarantee success or something. He says you got success. You have this. You have the house. What have I got? I've got nothing. I've got a family. I have to protect them. It was a great scene. It was a great back and forth. It was passionate. It was really well acted. But obviously he's a rat, and I have to write that because he is a rat. Well, and he wronged Harshad and Ashwin.
He wronged them, but how many times did they wrong him? So you can see it from both sides, John. But
sticking him into the CBI, that was a low blow.
Well, they didn't know at that point. They thought it was a mistake, did they not? And it wasn't until he came clean.
No, I mean, he actually stuck them in. Bushan went afterwards and ratted on Harshad.
That was after the confrontation, though, wasn't it? You know, I think at that point the relationship just broke down. Yeah. And
he was getting in before them in a sense.
It was protecting himself, John. And that's, I suppose, if you're in that position, that's what you do.
Yeah.
Doesn't make it right. No, it certainly doesn't. You know, especially with the way their relationship started in episode 1. You know, where
it's quite ironic, isn't it, Stephen? Poetic.
He was showing him the ropes.
Yeah, he started Harshad's journey and he ends Harshad's journey. That's quite poetic. That is pretty. Yeah. That's poetry in motion. Yep. And then obviously, Stephen, we get a final house raid. Harshad, and it's a great scene. He's finally
sitting down watching the TV.
Yeah, because he has a moment with his wife prior to it. He's sitting on the bed. He says, "Look, I'm tired. I'm done with this. I just want to chill and relax." She says, "Well, if you want to stop worrying, just stop thinking about it. Think about me." And they have a great sort of moment. Then the family are together watching the TV in the house. They're all at ease. They've came to terms with it. The raid comes. He gets taken away. Gets arrested. He's getting slapped. And essentially that says he's been killed by the state because he's been put in such a situation of stress and immense pressure that his heart just couldn't survive it. He's ended up having a heart attack. And the state have got what they wanted. They've killed their scapegoat in a sense. And I've said that, Stephen. Thoughts on that? First and foremost, the actual scene, then thoughts on his death in the context of the series. It was tragic watching it. Absolutely tragic. And then in real world terms, do you think they actually did kill him by not getting him the treatment he deserved? Because watching that 2001, being left to sit in a waiting room and you're having a heart attack, that is barbaric. Barbaric.
The fact that they were carrying him on foot as well.
Horrendous.
It's a bit medieval, but do I think they killed him? Yeah, I think they did. I think the pressure they were putting on him, the harassment from the authorities as well, deliberate harassment as well, to keep him on his toes, to keep him in his place. They said that in the previous episode, you know, just send him a message, just remind him, make sure that he's scared, you know. And I think Harshad was very good at portraying this confident, positive guy, but I think deep down,
that'll tell on anyone, Steve.
Yeah, and it did. It was proven that it was, John. The actual sequence itself, I love the score when he was getting led into the hospital, and obviously when he was sitting on that bench. And the saddest thing is he died alone. That was probably the most heartbreaking moment of the season, was him just being there himself. His brother's
shouting
not
for
there.
his brother.
His wife's
was it his wife?
It might have been. I can't remember, John. I was actually caught up in the moment. I thought it was very sad.
It was.
It was very emotional. But his family came in, and I actually felt sorry for the boy. He just absolutely broke down.
Yeah.
His wife, she's down, obviously, just cradling him, absolutely inconsolable. But it was such an emotional scene. But it was going to happen. The only thing I will say, John, is I did not think that this season would take us up to his death.
No.
You know how when filmmakers, the likes of Martin Scorsese, will pick Bob Dylan or the Rolling Stones, they will do a section of their life. I wrongly assumed this is what they were going to do with the Harshad Mehta story. I felt they were going to do it from his humble beginnings, just to give you a sort of brief intro of where he came from, and then focus on the scam and not everything afterwards. We got a whole decade after the scam
Yeah.
as well in this episode, which was another great with ours. And I didn't think we would actually see the death of him as well. I think it was quite a depressing end to the season.
In their defence, Stephen, the whole charade, the investigations into him, it didn't end until he died.
Oh, well, that's the title cards explain.
Obviously, he dies, and then only then does it all sort of crumble. There's no evidence. They can't harass the guy anymore because he's no longer there. So it didn't end until he actually died. So that's the only really logical way they could have concluded it, was with him dying.
Yeah.
And it was tragic watching it. It was barbaric in the way they treated the guy. He's left to his own devices, having a heart attack. I was cringing watching it. I'm like, get that guy help. But also I knew that he'd passed away with a heart attack, so I knew he wasn't getting any help.
No.
And obviously the way it's framed with the fireworks going off and stuff like that,
Yeah.
it was a tragedy. The whole story is a tragedy. And the way they phoned Suitcase as well and inform her that he's died, and the sort of juxtaposition of that and the family grieving, the guilt of her maybe pursuing this guy and leading to this. It was a nice scene. It was a nice moment, really well structured.
She reacted greatly to it. The actress, that is.
No. I don't think she cared, Stephen.
No,
really.
She did. I don't think she cared. We say it wasn't personal. I don't think it was personal towards the person. I think it was towards the person's actions. She was more personal about.
I don't think she wanted him to die or anything
of course
like
not.
that.
I just don't think it was that dramatic. I don't think it would have been true to her character either to have her break down in tears or anything like that when she heard the news. I think I think it was more taken aback.
And of course, this whole thing is, as you did say, adapted from her perspective on the events.
Yeah.
And memoirs and stuff like that. So
exactly,
she's not going to create a scene where she's sobbing her eyes out. She'll want to create this stoic version of herself where she
was awarded.
took her
I don't know what it was in 2006.
Yeah, I seen something. Yeah, she get a sort of an award for maybe
journalism.
her endeavours in journalism. So
Yeah.
fair play to her, man. As I did say, you don't get a better legacy than completely changing a corrupt financial system, changing it to the point where it goes from being a discombobulated jungle-like mess of BRs and all this stuff to cutting that shit down within a week or 2 weeks. That's a complete change of the system, and she brought that on by her investigation. So not only a work it, and look, Stephen, she was an intriguing character in this story as well. The only sort of female journalistic figure in the Times of India. That story is an aside. Her rise and the fall of Harshad, as she says, it was really intriguing.
And also one of the probably a handful of the characters and / actors that was in it from the very beginning right to the very end as well.
Absolutely. I think she was in one of the first scenes. She was in the first scene.
Yeah,
it was that little guy that, obviously the whistleblower.
The whistleblower, yeah.
And Stephen, final thoughts in the episode though, and the series as a whole. I have to say, the episode 9 was my favourite of the entire season.
Yeah,
there was some really standout moments throughout the whole season though. There wasn't one episode I thought was terrible. They all had something going for them in one way or another. This one, not quite my top. I don't know why it's rated the top, but I suppose it's concluding it in a really nice way.
Yeah.
Even if it does jump 10 years and stuff like that, and that kind of rubbed me up the wrong way.
Because you were always a supporter of Harshad as well. And to obviously to see the decline in obviously the end to his life is a downer. But if that's what happened, that's what happened. You can't change that.
Stephen, I like seeing the real Harshad at the end though, the little conversations. This guy was like a celebrity.
Yeah.
He was on having talk shows and stuff like that.
How good the actor playing him was as well, John, and how he sort of captured these mannerisms as well.
Yeah.
It wasn't my favourite episode, but I kind of expected that. I always feel that if,
I don't like watching things to the end, Stephen, as you know.
Yeah, I know.
There's a lot of seasons I've not finished.
I know, because it's the end. That's it. It doesn't go any further than that. And sometimes you try and hang back to see that finale. But the season as a whole, the person who recommended us watching that trailer reaction all that time back 2-3 months ago, I'd just like to thank them for that, because that we would not have known about this television series. We wouldn't have known about that trailer that we did the reaction to, which absolutely exploded on our YouTube channel. I think it's our fourth most watched video.
Wasn't going to put it out.
About 20,000 views, which is impressive for a small channel like ourselves. It got us intrigued enough to do episodic reviews.
Yep, first time we've done it.
It's the first time we've did this on.
And we'll be doing it again.
Our show and for movie burners in 4 years. We've always stayed true to doing movies because that's the name of our show, but it was we took that chance. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a nice little break from doing just the standalone movies and doing it episodic. Was fantastic. Also, the episodes flew in for me.
Yeah.
Every one of them felt, in my book, maybe about 20 minutes long, because I was that intrigued to see where this story was going to take us.
Yep.
Fantastic. Acting as well was superb. Loved the music in it as well, and I liked the editing as well. It's something we don't really talk about too much on television shows, but I loved all those sort of panning shots. There was one in, I think, the last episode, it was the ocean, the tide coming in.
Yep.
And I think that was quite a sort
Well,
of...
he says, I am a sea.
That was a poetic sort of moment as well, and it was those little things that make good television.
Well, he says, Stephen, this is Bombay, everything will change, but the ocean will always be there. So I am the ocean of Dalal Street.
Yeah.
So the guy was the ocean. So again, poetic. Stephen, I can only echo what you says. I've really enjoyed the season as a whole. Really well written. Extraordinarily well written. Extraordinary, yeah. The great Martin. Really well written. Really flowed by. Every episode was quick. 25-30 minutes gone in a heartbeat. Brilliant acting performances from Pratik Gandhi. Everyone involved, really. The woman that played Sucheta as well. Really good acting throughout. Well structured in the main, apart from that time jump in the final episode. Just an interesting story too about this maverick guy, how he rose from nothing in a crowded little house with all his family to being one of the superstars of sort of the financial game in India, moseying into a cliquey sort of money market. What a story it was, and all stories have to have their end, and sadly the end was tragic. It was sad to watch, but it was well sort of created, faithfully adapted from what I can see,
and it was worth watching.
It was well worth watching.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed it, man. And it's going to round it up. I ain't got much more to add. It's going to round up our episode 10 review. It's going to end up the review of the entire season as a whole. I can only again echo what you said, Stephen. Thanks to the person who recommended reacting to it. We wouldn't have known it existed if you didn't, and I'm glad I've watched it. First foray into Indian TV as well, so I'm sure we'll be giving that a bash again at some point.
Definitely.
But that's going to round it up, man. What was your thoughts on the whole season, that episode, everything in between? You can comment below if you've got anything to say. You can also like the video if you've enjoyed it, and you can subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content like this in the future. And if you do, that's what you'll get, guys. But look, going to bid you farewell. It's very late here with a short and sweet bye-bye.